Hey babes, I'm Marisa and this is Balance in Bloom, a safe space where we connect with Black women and celebrate how they are balancing life's demands while blooming into their full potential. Today I am super excited to sit down with Temi Popo. She is a globe-trotting, faith-led entrepreneur who's on a mission to rewrite the rules of travel and business for women. As the founder of Girls Trip Tours, co-founder for Hire and Miss Lou's Afro-Caribbean soul food restaurant, Temi is building sisterhood, impact economies, and scalable solutions, one trip and one entrepreneurial endeavor at a time. Ready to dive into how she balances it all? Let's get into it. Hey Tammy, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I feel like I'm waking up now. She's waking up. I think I've taken my supplements. I've had a little something to eat and I'm feeling a bit more revitalized than I was literally just 5 minutes ago. I'm going to jump right into this question. So, how are you doing with everything you have going on? And please describe everything you have going on as well.
Okay. I'm doing well. I feel like I'm in a very different place this year than I've been for the last decade plus. Um, I'm taking life
Hmm.
less seriously. I'm being a lot more joyful about things. I'm trying to approach every day just, seeking moments of joy and peace and harmony, which is not how I've been living
Hmm.
my life. And so even though I'm very busy, I have a lot of things going on, I'm not letting it stress me. But in terms of what I
Hmm.
do have going on, I have a travel company. So I bring women from all around
Hmm.
the world to visit Africa, and I'm actually based in Nairobi, Kenya right now. And I've also started a restaurant here. So it's a Nigerian Jamaican fusion spot that I am opening up with my husband. So we have the opening party at the end of the month. So that is trying to bring me stress, but I'm not allowing it.
Listen, it's trying and it will not succeed. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that it was a wife-husband duo. That's so cute. How's that been, because I can imagine it's brought some new dynamics. How are you two working together?
Yeah, it's so funny because when we first met, what I loved most about him is how much he saw my potential, my vision, what I was trying to build, and really supported that. And he always said to
Hmm.
me, like, I know you're destined to do great things, and I feel like my purpose is to support you in achieving what you were sent here to do. And so, despite him saying that, he also said, I will never do business with you because you are too intense, which I was very intense in my 20s. I didn't play about my money. And so, it's so funny that, yeah, we're starting a business together now and we're working together. We communicate a lot differently now than we did when we first met. So, yeah,
Hmm.
it's been good.
Oh, I love that. Just so that people know, I met you at Mozilla and I wouldn't describe you as intense. I didn't interact with you that
Mm,
much, but I definitely thought, okay, she's about
yeah.
business. She know like that's how I remembered you. So then when I started seeing your, things pop up online and learned about this lifestyle that you're living now, I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like such a drastic change, but you come across as a lot happier
I'm so
online and a
happy.
lot more. Yeah, and I feel is that since leaving North America that shift has taken place.
Oh, 100%. And I don't know if it's just the place. I think it's also kind of the circumstances that led me here because I've
Hmm.
lived in a bunch of different places. I've moved around my whole life. And I think wherever I was, I kind of prioritized business, trying to, build this thing that I just feel so destined to. And I took that so seriously, even at the expense of my health. And it was when my health started to decline
Yeah.
that I was like, okay, no, we can't keep doing this. It's not sustainable. And so part of
Hmm.
my healing was moving away from North America, but it was also moving away from the culture and just the lack of
Hmm.
appreciation of Black women in that part of the world. That's just my feeling. That was
Hmm.
my experience. And
Hmm.
moving here, so actually, I first lived in Mexico, then Cape Town, South Africa, and now in Nairobi, Kenya. And those three places, I really found I really found my peace again.
Wow. Oh, that's so interesting to hear that you lived in Mexico. I've always wanted to move to a Spanish speaking country. I think anyone who knows me knows that I'm trying to be in Colombia. Okay. I've been saying that for about 6 years now. And I think at the end of the year, I'm finally going to go. But speaking of the countries that you visited, how would you say that it shaped the way you build your community out today?
Yeah, so I grew up moving a lot and I grew up living in different languages as well. So when I was
Hmm.
10, I moved from Manhattan, New York to Cotonou, Republic of Benin, which is a small country in West Africa near Nigeria. And my mom was just like, yeah, so you're moving. And by the way, it's a French speaking country. And so had to
Hmm.
learn French on the fly. And so I just think like the way I grew up
Wow.
living in all these different places, all these different parts of the world, I think I'm just a naturally open person. And so I've always found
Hmm.
that people are drawn to me. And I think it's because of how open I am. And so I've always found it easy to make friends. And community is a huge part of just having people like you and want to like believe in what you believe in and want to connect with what you're doing. And even just
Hmm.
moving around so much made me a good communicator to the point that I can effectively communicate what I'm trying to build and the vision that I see for
Hmm.
the different companies I've had. And so I've never found it challenging, building community and expressing my vision to
Hmm.
people and having them understand what I'm trying to do and be supportive of that.
It sounds like I feel when I speak to people who have moved around a lot as children, they either have an experience similar to yours or they have an experience where they kind of can't feel at home anywhere. But from what you're saying, it's like you were able to find a home and a community and really just leverage that kind of moving all about to your advantage to the point where it's now a business for you. It's like a thriving business for you. And I want to go back because you said you're based in Nairobi, Kenya right now. Is it that you have a plan to leave, or is this where you're kind of trying to stay?
So it's funny you say that because I do feel that same way. Like, as much as I can make anywhere home, I also feel like nowhere
Hmm.
is home, or at least maybe I just have
Mm,
multiple homes, but I've never
yeah.
been, yeah, tied to a place. So like when you ask, oh, do you see Nairobi as that like next place? It's hard for me to commit. I think I have like
Hmm.
a fear of commitment to places. So I never will
Hmm.
say like, yes, this is it, but I think this is where I plan to build out the next chapter for sure.
That's so interesting. It's such a reflection of your childhood. Obviously, what we experience in childhood is usually reflected in life, whether it's in our relationships or just how we walk through the world. But this is like so, it's so clear. So, you have spoken a lot about purpose. How has your relationship with purpose evolved since you left America? You've just said that this is the place you feel like you're going to build out the next chapter. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I guess so. Growing up in the States and then moving back to Africa and then going back to the States, it was just a lot of back and forth between Africa and the diaspora, either the US or I also
Mm,
lived in Europe for a bit. So I
hmm.
kind of always wanted to connect those communities, right? Because you have those conversations, the diaspora wars, and sometimes it's
Mm,
so frustrating, especially when you know better, you kind of see the answers that some people just don't get because they've lived in one place and they just see their
tunnel
perspective.
vision.
Right. But as someone who grew up with African Americans, but in a Nigerian community, and I've seen different African communities in different parts of the world, it's just like
Mm,
I see the connection so easily. And so I feel like that is my
hmm.
purpose, to connect the diaspora, to just bring us together and be like, hey, do you not see how similar we are?
Hmm.
And I do that through so many different things. I started out trying to do that through the magazine. So writing stories
Hmm.
that would help people understand what was going on in different parts of the continent, because when I started my magazine, I
Hmm.
felt like people didn't know what was happening in Africa. And if they did, they only
Mm.
knew Nigeria, South Africa, maybe Kenya. And I was like, there are 54 countries. Let me create a magazine
Hello.
around that. And
Hmm.
then fast forward to the travel, it was like, okay, let me actually do this IRL. Let me bring people to the continent and kind of show them what I've been trying to
Mm.
explain through the magazine and through different mediums. And then now I feel like I'm doing that through food, starting this
Yes.
restaurant and showing the connections between Nigerian and Jamaican food and American soul
Mm,
food, and then bringing it to Kenya where like a staple food is ugali, which is basically cornmeal, and then showing them how Jamaicans eat cornmeal and
mhm.
how Americans do grits, and just always connecting
Yeah.
the dots. That's like my thing, and so I feel that's my purpose, and I can best carry it out on the continent.
And oh my gosh, travel and food go hand in hand. The way I've been eyeing up that Girls Trip Tours website, I'm trying to be on that November trip. I'm so serious.
Please
It
come.
looks wonderful and I really want to. And when I was looking at the restaurant, oh, on an empty stomach as well, girl. Okay. So, what role does faith play in the way that you move through life and business?
So it plays a huge role. I grew up Catholic, so I went to Catholic
Hmm.
elementary school in the States and then a Catholic high school when I moved back to Nigeria. And even in college, it was something every Sunday. Like, I didn't need my parents to force me to go to church. It was just part of my
Mm,
life. But I think it's really when I got sick that my relationship expanded from just being Catholic and being religious and kind of following doctrine to now having a personal relationship with God. And so
mm.
after 4 years of being in pain, trying to get a diagnosis as a Black woman, that was a struggle just because, yeah, people didn't care. It was just like they didn't care. The doctors didn't care.
Yeah, let's just call a spade a spade. Yeah.
Yeah, some even told me. One doctor was like, everyone has pain. Like, I don't understand why you keep coming into the ER. Like, go take a Tylenol. Like,
Wow.
yeah, like no one took it
That's disgusting.
seriously. Yeah. And so I basically had to use my network to self diagnose and then push for tests to finally get a diagnosis. And at that point, they were like, "Oh, well, it took us so long to diagnose you that it's now like really bad and you need surgery and we're gonna reconstruct." It was just
Oh
like this
gosh.
whole thing, and I was just at that point, I was like, "Okay, doctors can't help me, and I really don't want to do the surgery. I don't trust you,
Mm,
right?" And so
mhm.
I started praying like I've never prayed before. And I did get a miraculous healing. Like the doctors had said, this tissue in your body is
Wow.
dead. We need to do the surgery to cut it out. And then right before the surgery, they did a new scan and they were like, we don't know how it happened. It took them so long to give me that result. We're like, we don't know how it happened, but it's better. And it's just been
Wow.
getting better. And I honestly feel like it was just me finally bringing my faith into my life. Like my faith was always something separate, but I brought it into
Mm,
my life. I
mm,
brought it into my business now, and it's just really
mhm.
changed how I approach everything. And that's why I can never be stressed again because I know God's got me.
Oh, absolutely. What an amazing story. And I feel like, there are so many people who share their stories about how before they get their big break, let's just call it, you'll go through these trials and tribulations and this refinement and this kind of incubation process that God puts you through. But I have never heard a story quite like the one you just told. I don't want to say that God was testing you to see if you were really reliant on Him and really trusted Him, but that is one perspective that could be taken. And with the trust that you placed in Him, that miraculous recovery, wow, that's amazing.
And I
I
also
love that
think
so much.
that he was pushing me to the path that I was supposed to be on because, as you said, you met me at
Mm,
work. I was there trying to work
mm,
and do this entrepreneurship thing, and it was just too much. I'd done that for
mm,
10 years, maintaining a corporate
mm,
career and different businesses, and I think God was just telling me like, it
mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be this much. Like you really need to focus on
Yeah.
one thing. And the sickness did force me to quit my job, and I've never been happier. I've never been more fulfilled, and yeah, I've never made more money. So
Girl, get it. I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that story so much. Being an entrepreneur can feel isolating sometimes, but who's in your corner and what does your support system look like? I'm going to say your husband, of course,
mhm.
but outside of your husband.
Yeah, so outside of my husband, I would definitely say my sister. And I think even for her, it kind of took a second. I know a lot of people that probably do entrepreneurship feel like this, where you first start and you just feel like your family should be your number one supporters, but that's not always the case. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? They wish you well, but they're not like super fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but I think when my sister finally came on a girls trip, I think that's where she really like saw everything and really understood like what I was doing and what I was
Mm.
building. And now I've helped her launch her own business. So I also help women
Wow.
start businesses with co-founder for hire. And she has always said, I'm not
Hmm.
entrepreneurial, I'm a corporate girly, but even she was inspired to start her own thing, which made me really happy.
Oh, that's amazing. And I definitely hear you. Listen, my family are so, so, so supportive, but sometimes I feel that there could be a little undertone, whether it's conscious or not, of like, okay, so the real thing, when's the real job gonna be here? And it's so I really don't think it's
It's
intentional.
not.
I think it's actually probably coming from a place of care
Mm-hmm.
and maybe fear that something might not work out. But similar to you, I have two sisters and a brother, and one of my sisters attended one of my events, and seeing her experience it and just be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing what you're doing. Like, I can see how it could possibly stress you out at times, but it all comes together in the end. And I can only imagine, like, doing the events that I do on such a small scale, comparing that to what you do on a larger scale, coordinating that travel and doing all of the things must be wild work.
Mm-hmm.
But I can only imagine that the payoff and the testimonials and the experiences and all the things make it worth it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So let's talk about legacy
Mm-hmm.
and your grandmother's story, which is incredible. How does her legacy show up in your work now?
It shows up everywhere. And I think in many ways, when I was trying to figure out what girls' trips looked like and what made this travel company different, I think her legacy was really at the forefront of my mind. Just connecting ambitious women who are in many ways ahead of their time to young girls who need to see that vision of what they could be. And
Mm-hmm.
that's actually what inspired the theme of the first trip to Ghana. I had a friend who runs a coding academy for girls. And she was saying that the girls' parents were trying to get them to marry early because they didn't understand why they would want to go and get a computer science degree because it would make it harder to find a husband. And I was like, oh, we're not doing that. Like, I'm like, I'll fix this.
Mm-mm.
So I ended up bringing a group of women who were all working in tech, LinkedIn, eBay, Meta, and
Mm-hmm.
we went to Ghana and we worked with these girls, and it was just so fulfilling being able to kind of invest in the potential of the next generation. And that's
Yeah.
what my grandmother did for me, growing up with someone who was just ahead of her time, like studying abroad at a young
Mm,
age and being posted to the United Nations and serving her country at such
mm,
a high level. And then also having a grandfather who supported that. He was a stay at home dad when she was posted
yeah.
in Paris and he was taking care
Oh,
of 6 kids, you know. So even,
6. Wow.
yeah, so even that inspired like what I was looking for in a husband. I wanted someone who was
Mm.
supportive of my career, you
And you got
know?
it. You absolutely got that. That's what I was going to say. When I was looking at the website, I saw one of the young girls' testimonials, and I just literally read the first line, and I don't know why it hit me so much, but she was like, up until today, I'd never been asked what I wanted to do in my future.
Mm,
And it almost implied that she's been told what her future is going to look like and all of the things. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's something that maybe over here we take for granted. Not maybe, we do take it for granted, all of the things that and options that are available to us. But reading that, I was like, oh my goodness, you're really touching these girls and changing their lives. That's amazing work. So, still on girls' trip tours, it's not just travel, it's transformation. What impact moment from one of your trips has stuck out in your mind the most?
I think it's always working with the girls. Um, Even folks who come on the trip and they're like, I mean, I think the mentoring part is really cool, but that's not like the number one reason I'm on this trip. I'm on this trip, you know, for fun, for
Yeah.
culture, for all the things. But then at the end of the trip, that's what everyone says is their favorite moment. And I think it's
Mm.
because, like, just like you said, just reading that statement did something. So imagine like hearing it
Mm-hmm.
straight from their mouths after spending the
Yeah.
day with you. I just think every mentoring day we have is really amazing because the best way to get to know a country, I believe, is from the young people. And so talking to young girls
Mm.
who are in it in every sense, they're setting the trends, but at the same time they're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with some of the most vulnerable parts of society is always very impactful to me. And what stands out the most is a lot of the girls will say, "Oh, this is the first time I'm talking to a stranger," right? Because African
Mm.
girls aren't really allowed to be out and about
Outside.
networking. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it also teaches them how to connect with people and how to express themselves in ways
Hmm.
that they're not used to doing, which I think is very important.
And actually, on that, how are their parents convinced to let them, attend a session or a day? Because, like you said, it's not a thing for them to just be outside and, doing all of the things. So, how does that part work?
So I always work with organizations that are already in the community. So one of our main partners
Mm,
is Junior Achievement Africa, which Junior Achievement is
okay.
global. And if we can't connect to Junior Achievement, we worked with, smaller institutions, usually technical,
Hmm.
and then sometimes we just work directly with schools. So we kind of build the trust
Hmm.
through that. But I think it's good that we kind of sneak in because I remember in Zambia, after the experience we had, the girls were like, I'm gonna have a conversation with my dad because he needs to be more supportive of like my future
Hmm.
ambitions. And I love that that's their
Yes.
takeaway. Like they get more confidence
Hmm.
in their
Hmm.
dreams because it's been affirmed by someone outside of themselves and they said it out loud and they claimed it
Hmm.
and people have cheered them on.
Yes.
And as a young person, we know how important that is. I think a lot of us growing up wish we
Hmm.
had those people in our corner. And that's kind
Hmm.
of what I want to do with this program. It's like, with all the advantages I've had in my life, I know how hard it is to be a young Black girl in this world with
Yeah.
privilege.
Yeah.
And so, how much more
Mm.
difficult can it be without that privilege? So,
Mm.
yeah, I really love the program for exactly what it does because I think it's so needed.
Oh, 100%. I love that so much. I know I keep saying it, but I love everything that you're saying. You've been championing women, obviously, through girls' trip tours, girls and women, and also co-founder for Hire, which you mentioned. How do you decide what ideas to pursue and what to put on pause?
So when I was in my 20s, I feel like I did a lot of things in terms of entrepreneurship. I would have an idea and I'd run with it. And I have the energy for that. So I don't actually think that was a bad idea. And I do encourage people, especially when you're younger and you don't have as many responsibilities and you have all the energy in the world, do stuff, fail, start again. But now,
Mhm.
at this stage in my life, my whole thing is editing. So editing ideas, but also making sure that everything works together and I'm not having my different ideas fight with each other. So the
Mm.
restaurant made sense because I had the money to do it and completely hired out almost. So it wasn't going to
Yeah.
take energy, but at the same time, I could see it feeding into what I'm trying to do around hospitality in Africa. I could see Girl Ship Tours
Mm.
clients, enjoying dining experiences at the restaurant. I could see the restaurant being a way that I build my network in Nairobi. I could
Yeah.
see that connecting to building Airbnb villas and things that I have,
Oh my
happening in the
gosh,
future.
yes.
So it works
Yeah.
together. But before, I feel like I would do things that were pulling me in different directions and it was exhausting.
Mm.
So I don't
Yeah.
think having a lot of ideas is bad as long as you find ways that they feed into each other and support each other's growth.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true, actually. I'm definitely of the same belief in terms of maybe having something that you're just pivoting around.
Hmm.
Of course, have all the ideas in the world, but do they make sense? Do they kind of bleed into each other? That is a for sure way to lessen that stress and just make it make sense. And I think I was having a conversation yesterday about niches, and there's discussions online about, don't niche me down. I am the niche and all of the things. And listen, while I agree, I love the multifaceted, multidimensional, multi-hyphenate nature of
Hmm.
people, but there is something to be said about if you find something, there are a million ways to to look at things. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. What does balance look like for you right now, and has that changed over the years? I'm gonna go with yes. It has changed, but maybe you can lean into some of the grounding things that you do, or I don't know, meditative things that you do.
Yeah. So balance for me is kind of prioritizing almost like vacation and work comes second. So I'm trying to live my life on
Hmm.
vacation, right? So
Hello.
living in Kenya, that works. for me. It allows me to fly 1 hour and I'm in the Indian Ocean, or drive 2 hours and I'm in,
How wonderful.
a mountain range. So I really love that for me.
I love that for you too.
But then, just in terms of my day to day, when I am in Nairobi and things are a little busier, I've carved out Wednesdays as my rest day. I will do a physical activity, like right now it's tennis, that's my thing. And then I'll come home, nice hot shower, and my masseuse comes over.
Mm,
I do a nice at home massage,
yes.
spa treatments if I want, facial, manicure, pedicure. And like I
Mm-hmm.
work on Wednesdays, but I try not to schedule calls. So I'm just
Yeah.
in my room chilling and just enjoying the day. And then you just have 2 days of work before it's the weekend or it's your Wednesday break again. And then with my
Yeah.
executive assistant, we really worked together to just be very in sync. And I did a lot of work
Mm.
up front so that now I enjoy the benefits of having someone who
Yes.
knows me so well and knows what I need and how I like things done. And that's been really helpful, just taking off my plate all the things that I don't want to do so that when I am working, I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing the things I love. So when people say like
Yeah.
do what you love and it won't feel like work, it's kind of half true,
Mm-hmm.
because the things that need to get done to allow that, someone still needs
Mm-hmm.
to do them. So I think once you
Yeah.
hire that out, then you can be on that tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Wednesdays, I have a little wellness Wednesday situation going on as well. I kind of fell off a little bit though. I used to be so stringent with it. I said on Wednesdays, don't call my phone, okay?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, call my phone, you won't get an answer because it's going to be on do not disturb all day. And I just took the time to just even stay away from my computers, just screens in general. And it made such a difference. I feel like I didn't realize the difference it was making until I fell off. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is actually, it actually centers me in the middle of the week and my brain isn't foggy and going crazy, which it can do from time to time. So I'm thinking of, not thinking, I am going to reinstate that. And I even think, I know we were talking about faith before, but fasting is something that has
Mm-hmm.
also kind of centered me somehow. And it's not just the discipline of it, but I feel like it allows me to actually have that closer relationship with God. I also grew up Catholic and went to Catholic primary school, secondary school, and I am where we diverge is where my mum would be like, "Okay, Marisa, are you going to church?
Mm-hmm.
Are you still going to church? Are you going to church?" And I always had this thing where I would go to church and then not go to church, go to church, not go to church. But recently I've just started going again and it's just it sounds, maybe it sounds over the top, but it has changed my life and my outlook and how I approach things. And I'm attending a church that's not Catholic. It's more non-denominational and more kind of, I guess, my vibe. Nothing against the Catholic Church, but when I compare the two, I feel like at church, the Catholic Church, I'm just standing there like no one can see me, but like I'm in a tin of sardines, just like, straight laced. But at this one, it's a bit more interactive and the congregation is younger. And I don't know, it's just, I'm connecting more. And I've been listening to a lot of worship songs as well. And I'm like,
Yeah.
who am I? But I love who it is. I love
Yeah.
who this person is. It just sets the tone, you know?
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I also am
Yeah.
no longer going to the Catholic Church. So when I kind
Yeah.
of got my healing, it was through a pastor. Like I was following this praise and worship and wasn't Catholic.
Mm.
And then I had a trip to the Vatican, and what they built, it made me a little less Catholic. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
It looks like a museum and it's filled with gold and
And
riches.
marble, and it's just,
And marble. Yeah.
I went to an event at the Pope's Summer Palace, and I was like, okay,
Oh.
this is
Oh,
where my
okay, sir.
$10 donation from Catholic school every week would
Mm-hmm.
go. It was just, yeah, I was like, okay, maybe not.
It's giving opulent. Yeah, I get it. And I don't know whether you also just connect with the congregation just seems a bit more lively. It seems less kind of what you said, like just sticking to a doctrine and just being very almost methodical with it. It
Hmm.
seems more free and
Yeah,
more like you can formulate your own relationship, if that makes
100%.
sense.
And I think there's a huge difference though,
Yeah.
like between like the Catholic Church in North America versus Nigeria. Because like in Nigeria,
Oh, I
it's
bet.
not stiff, right? So it was a whole different experience when I moved
Mm.
back. And then coming back to the States, it was a little harder. And then Canada was rough. Canada was like, I can't put church down.
That's so funny. Try church in the UK, girl. I want to ask you a question about your restaurant, Miss Lou's. It's a wonderful tribute. And I wanted to actually ask why, what was her name? Louise? The woman who it's kind of named after. Can you speak to why her?
Yeah, I think because I'm such a person that's inspired by other women, that's like my whole thing. And so when I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking of a
Mm-hmm.
name, I was like, okay, I'm looking for a female name. And then my husband told me about her, and she is responsible for making patois an official language. And I just thought of the idea of patois and it being
Mm.
mix of languages, and what I was trying to do with the
Yeah.
food is mix all the different aspects of the diaspora together in a plate, and she was able to make that language official, and so I ended up choosing that
I love it. It's just, it rolls off the tongue. It
name.
sounds like, something that sounds like a throwback or something that's retro. Like it's always been there, even though it's new, like a new classic. And I feel like that's what this restaurant is going to be with the soul food. And oh my gosh, I'm like just dreaming of the food. I was looking at the pictures and getting very excited. Let me just put it like that. Tourism can be both empowering and extractive. What does ethical, women centered tourism look like in practice to you?
Yeah, so when I think about tourism on the African continent, especially, it does feel very extractive. Um,
Mm,
it's funny because when I would initially talk about this idea, especially with non-Black people, and even with some Black people, they would
mhm,
associate Africa with like obviously poverty, war, and all these terrible things. And it's like, oh, is it safe to travel there on vacation? Like, do people vacation in Africa? Like,
mm,
and it's so funny because when you actually travel to the continent, you will see so many white
mhm.
people living their absolute best lives in
Best
places
lives.
that you wouldn't even expect it to be tourist hotspots.
Hmm.
But Africa is
Hmm.
such a massive center of tourism, and that even goes beyond safaris. And it is actually one of the more expensive places to vacation. You have safaris that cost
Hmm.
$12,000 a night. Like anybody would tell you,
Oh.
yeah, like traveling in Africa is not cheap. From the flights to the hotels, the meals might be cheap in between, but that's about it. I just see all this money going into the tourism industry, but then when you see who's benefiting,
Hmm.
it's these same people, the usual suspects.
Hmm.
It's the Brits, it's the Germans,
Hmm.
it's the
Hmm.
French, right? And they own all
Hmm.
the tourism real estate. They have the licenses for the safaris, and Black people are
Hmm.
doing the hard work in the industry, but they're not making the money. And so with my company, I do my best to prioritize locally owned vendors, Black owned vendors, women owned vendors,
Yeah.
so that the tourism dollars are going straight to the community. And a good
Hmm.
example of that is what we've built in South Africa with our Black owned South Africa experiences, where especially in Cape
Hmm.
Town, which has so much white wealth, I spent 4 months looking for all the Black businesses so that we could support them, from the
Mm.
first and only Black owned winery in South Africa to a
Wow.
Black owned fine dining restaurant that deserves a Michelin star, and just so many vendors in
Hmm.
between. And you get the experience, you get the service you're looking for, but the storytelling that you get around how they were
Mm.
able to go from apartheid ending in 1994 to building generational wealth by 2025 is incredible. And you can't
Mm.
get those stories.
Wow, girl, I need to go on one of these trips. Oh my gosh. So many people talk about doing it for the culture, doing it for the culture, but you're doing it with the culture. How do you stay grounded in that mission? You've spoken to it a lot actually throughout, but is there anything else you can share?
Yeah, I think with everything I do, it's about community. Like you said from very early on,
Hmm.
it took me so long to step into the forefront of my businesses and be the face of my brand because I just felt like my mission was to highlight other people, bring other people up. So especially in the magazine era, I was just trying to tell people stories and shed light on what they were doing. And then I realized over time that I needed to kind of step into the forefront for people to see my business and see what I was
Yeah.
doing. But there's just something so much more rewarding about winning as a community. And while I could,
Mm,
start a travel company and, figure out themes to do by myself, I really want to build with other entrepreneurs who were already in the space before I showed
mhm,
up and just kind of amplify the work
mhm,
that they do. So that's why with the travel company, I really chose this ecosystem approach. And that's also helped me scale, where we're able to be operational in six
mhm,
countries without necessarily investing in six countries, but rather finding the
mhm.
people doing the amazing work, plugging into them
Yeah.
and, feeding into exactly their vision.
And you do wear so many hats. You're situated in loads of different places and you wear many hats as a founder, mentor, builder, chef. Which one are you leaning into most right now? And which one do you enjoy the most? Do you enjoy one the most?
So right now I'm really leaning into the chef because I think that was always a dream. I've loved food growing up. I used to bake and sell cakes as a kid. I went to culinary school
Oh.
in Toronto. I've always watched cooking shows and I'm
Hmm.
like, if I have a restaurant, I'll do this, I'll do that.
Hmm.
And now I'm getting to do that. So I'm really enjoying
How
developing the
wonderful.
recipes. Thank you. Yeah, and like also putting on my corporate hat as like an innovation strategist, UX designer, and being like, okay, what's the
Mm,
customer experience and how do I, build out the menus? So just using like the bigger part of my brain for more creative tasks is really fun.
hmm.
And then I really love supporting other women entrepreneurs. So as much as I love running my own companies, I've always wanted to share more of my knowledge, but I was so in the trenches.
Yeah.
I was in the trenches of my
Hmm.
businesses in my 20s, and now I feel like I have a bit more space
Mm.
to share as I go. And so, co-founder for hire has been really fun to do that.
And what is next for you? Would you say you'd be leaning more into that? And is there anything exciting on the horizon you can give us a sneak peek into? The restaurant is officially launching, but is there something you can share with us?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the restaurant launch. But I think just generally in my future, I'm really excited about literally building the next chapter. So we've been able to
Yeah.
buy land here in Kenya, and yeah,
Wonderful.
it's in the most picturesque location, and so I can't wait to actually build a home that people can visit
Hmm.
and just really extend that
Yes.
community into a real space.
Oh, that's amazing. And one last wildcard question. If Girls Trip Tours had a theme song played every time someone booked a trip, what would it be?
Um, I would go with Miriam Makeba Pata Pata.
Okay, girl. All right. So we have reached the end. Where can the people find you on the socials, your personal and your businesses?
So personal is at Temi Popo. That's TemiPopo on Instagram and LinkedIn. And then for my businesses, at Girls Trip Tours on all platforms and at Co-Founder for Hire on Instagram.
Amazing. And at Miss
Yes, at Miss Lou's
Lou's.
Kenya. So if you're in Kenya,
Amazing.
yeah.
It was so wonderful just getting more of an insight into you. Like I said, or maybe I didn't say, I am up in those LinkedIn posts, liking and doing all of the things and seeing all of your updates, but to actually sit down and speak to you has been such a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great catching up.
Speak soon. Bye.